turn it over to me whenever you feel like it.
Perfect. Okay, sounds good. Here they come. All right, here we go. Everybody's joining. Hi, girls.
Recording in
Wait, did you do something?
Yeah.
Hi, girls. If you're here, you can turn on your videos. If you're comfortable having your video on, we're so glad to see you. Come on in, girls. We're so happy to have you. Hi.
Hi.
Lots of fun friends coming in. Good morning. Welcome. Hi, girls. Oh, look, we've got lots of friends and sisters and moms. If your sisters or brothers want to join, that's fun too.
Somebody with a guinea pig.
We've got guinea pigs. Oh my goodness, we've got all kinds of things coming on today. Well, welcome everybody. I'm so glad you're here. We'll give everybody another minute or two. Hi, girls. Oh, do we have some stuffed animals too joining in the fun? Good morning.
Meg Lowman.
Good morning. Yes. Okay, let's go ahead, girls and boys, if we have boys or brothers and joining us. Let's go ahead, girls, if you're here to listen, we can put ourselves on mute so that everybody can hear. We're going to be It's okay. Everybody's just going to just put themselves on mute so we can hear.
I can't see anything, right? I can't see anything. It's all black.
Okay, so we'll just give you a moment to try to adjust your video, maybe go into a different room in your house if you're having some little issues there. If you want to turn on your video, we'd love for you to join us. If you're more comfortable with your video off, that's fine too. I'm glad you're here today to join us to meet Dr. Lowman and her friend, Mr. Vic. And we're going to go ahead and get started. So hi, girls. I'm so glad to see you. So we have a Big Dreams Bloom summer camp going on this week, where so many of the girls who are on this call have participated, and they've read. I'm going to share my screen with you so you can see. We're so excited to have everybody join us. So the girls have been reading this story that's called The Leaf Detective, and they heard about Dr. Lowman, CanopyMeg, we heard that you like to be called CanopyMeg, and your work in the rainforest. We're so excited to have you here today to join us. I know our girls have lots of questions, but Meg, we wanted to tell you we've been learning that your work that you specialize in was the canopy layer where you did all your exploration. So we can't wait to hear a little bit more about that today. The girls loved these parts of the book where you used your great big imagination to come up with things that didn't even exist. And you came up with them, ways to explore and learn about the canopy layer. So we definitely want to hear a little bit more about that. We saw things that you invented and created with a whole team of people to be able to get you up into in those tall trees. And then guess what we did? I know the girls are going to want to show you, but we had some challenges where we created our ultimate Treehouse Lab, where we pretended, we all had little dolls. We pretended that they were you. And they created a walkway to climb from one tree to another. And they created labs for you to work in and for them to imagine themselves working in a lab with you. So I'm going to turn it over to you and let you introduce yourself and your friend Vic. We're also happy you're here. We have a lot of questions at the end, but we're super excited to be with you today. So thank you so much for coming.
Oh, thank you. If I could put it on my website, I think kids would love to see that all over the world if we can do that. So nice to meet everybody. I'm CanopyMeg, and I'm actually up in Vermont looking at trees in the Northwoods. And my friend Vic is down in Florida, so we're on separate screens, but we're excited to talk to you a little bit about my research and exploration of the forests. And Vic, who's an expert on how you're raised to pay for, and it's just a little something that we wanted to share with you during this talk. And when we're finished with our pictures, we would love to hear your questions. So Thanks for being here and thanks for studying the rainforest. So with that, I'm going to figure out how to advance my slides if I can. Just a sec. I think I might have probably not. Thank you very much, and see if I can. Yeah, there we go. So raise your hand, girls, if you ever climbed a tree in your life. Anybody out there beside me ever climb a tree? Emily, oh my gosh. So lots of us have climbed trees, maybe not with ropes and maybe not with inflatable air balloons or anything, but I think for a lot of us, that's how we might have learned about nature. And for me, when I was little, I played in the backyard. Believe it or not, there weren't computers or cell phones. So I did a lot of outdoor play, which is what got me kind of interested in nature. And so that leads me to telling you one of the first things that I wanted to share, and that is the whole world of treetop science is very young, and it's about 50 years old, which might sound kind of old, but compared to physics and chemistry, which are thousands of years old, and even marine biology started in the 1950s when scuba gear was invented, and we went to the moon in 1960s, but we never studied the tops of trees till the 1980s. So that makes it a pretty young science. And technically, if you explore outer space, you're called an astronaut, right? And if you explore the tops of trees like me, you're called an arbornaut. So my title is really CanopyMeg the Arbornaut. And we need a lot more arbonauts because it's such a new science and there's so much up there we need to explore. So I'll hope you'll remember that and tell your families that you learned about a brand new science in your Bloom class today. There you can see a picture of me. I made a harness out of, and I used the slingshot to put a string over the tree and then haul the rope over the tree. And that was how we got started with studying the treetops. Today, about 50 years later, a lot of my students are really good climbers. They're even better than I am. And this is my student, Anthony, and guess what? He's in a redwood tree, which is one of the tallest trees in the world, and he's about 300 feet high. And he measured how all the water gets from the bottom of that tree way up to the top. It's like one great big enormous straw. So he's a pretty brave and good climber. Wouldn't you say, to climb up about 30 stories high, just like a high rise? And here's a few of my students in a country called Taiwan. And again, the trees are so big over there that I had to put arrows to the people. So those look like little of them have never been explored. So you have a lot of opportunity if you're interested in becoming an arbornaut someday. So the secret number 2 that I think is the most exciting from my climbing days is that once we got to the top of the tree, we found out that about half of life on Earth lives at the top of a tree. So that's about 50% of all the species. And nobody knew that. When you walk on the forest floor, you can't see most of those things. You can't see the little tiny insects. A lot of times you can't even see the frogs or some of the birds, because they're very well camouflaged. So lo and behold, becoming an arbornaut led me and some others to discovering all these new species. Some are not new, but we get to learn a lot more about them, like the koala, which you can see here in the top left, beetles in the top center. We can learn all about trees flowering and the pollinators of trees like that dogwood. We can learn about the red-eyed tree frog that lives in the trees of Belize, or that crazy frigate bird with its big red puffy throat that it uses to catch a girlfriend because it's supposed to look beautiful. And maybe even ants. In the bottom left, you see that cute little ant with its rear end looking like a leaf so that it can be camouflaged in the treetops. And there are billions of ants in the treetops. They are so, so common that you can't imagine. And they're all busy eating leaves and doing things, not just biting me, but just doing whatever they need to do to be ants. So you have to love insects because they do pollinate most of our flowers, and they give us a lot of fruits as a result of that. And they also decompose a lot of our waste material. So if you used to squish bugs, maybe you can stop squishing bugs, because insects are really common in the canopy and they're quite beautiful, and they're very, very important for our planet's health. There's also other things in the canopy. Believe it or not, there's a lot of different plants in addition to the trees. Things like this orchid, some vines, some bromeliads, moss, lichen, all kinds of things that are plants also live in the treetops. Some of the things that live in the canopy are very microscopic, like this. Does anybody know what this is? I don't know, Miss Bloomquist, if you've studied these,
I've
but
seen that before, like in
somebody said
pictures,
that.
but I forgot the name.
Maybe that's Sophia. Cool, good for you. It's a water bear, or a tardigrade is the
Yeah, that's
technical
what it
name.
is. And like they can
And they're
live
so
without water
cool.
for like a really long time. Or
Yep,
like
so
without food
maybe
or without
after
air
this,
for a really long time.
cool. And you guys could Google water bears after this presentation and see how they live in drops of water. So as you can imagine, they're really common in the rainforest, but nobody's really ever studied them before about 5 years ago. And so we think they might even be the commonest thing living in a tree in Orlando, if you can believe it. Definitely in a tree in Sarasota as well, where Vic and I live. So think about that. Because we can't see them, we don't know how abundant they are. And they also live in very hot water, like hot springs, in frozen water, like Antarctica, and they've even been into outer space and back. So they're very extreme animals. And it's kind of cool to think about all these things in the canopy that we've never, ever seen before. Some things use the canopy, even if they don't live up there. Here's a very beautiful leopard in India, where I was working for many years. And this leopard was eating its breakfast in the treetops because it didn't want to be disturbed on the forest floor. So the canopy's really handy, even for animals that might not live up there all the time. And to study the canopy, I think all of you now are experts on that because you've read my book. But one of the things I helped design over the years have been these treetop walks or sky walks. And I guess you've even made your own, which is very, very cool. By the way, there is one outside of Sarasota, Florida. If you're interested, maybe you can come down sometime. And there's also one here in the Amazon, which is pictured in this slide. And this one's 1/4 of a mile long, so that we can access a whole lot of trees. And every July I take teachers and families and kids to this walkway, and we help all of the local people learn about all the cool stuff that lives up in the canopy of the Amazon jungle, which is really, really fun. So keep that in mind someday if you ever want to have an amazing vacation away from home. Another thing that we've designed over the years as arbor-nuts are these inflatable gadgets like the hot air balloon and this cool raft that you can see hanging under the balloon. We're just about to put that raft on top of that cardboard tree, it's called, in Cameroon, Africa. And you can actually see a scientist standing in the raft, and we'll just take some rope and tether the raft to the tops of the trees so we can use it to sample at night and to sleep up there if we need to. It's kind of like a base camp in the treetops, and it's very lightweight, so it doesn't hurt the branches at the top of the tree. Here you can maybe see me just coming up a rope on that very same raft at night. I've climbed up this rope from the forest floor, and I'm going to use this amazing trampoline like inflatable thing to walk around and sample leaves. These cute little round yellow things are holes that I can poke my hand through if I want to sample a bug, or I want to sample a leaf, or maybe I want to hang a little trap down there to catch some things. So it's a very cool way of catching things at night and living up in the canopy at night and then moving it a few days later. Another thing that we have is a construction crane, a little more expensive and harder to come by, but these things are actually very cool because you can actually work out of the bucket of the crane pictured here, and we can do all kinds of things, to sample every leaf or every lizard or something like that, which is really helpful in order to count things or to go back to the same thing and study it very much in detail. So secret number 3, we've now had the fact that canopy science is very new. It's 50 years old, that it's led us to discover that half the species in the world live in the tops of trees. And number 3, I think you already probably know this, but it's really, really fun for kids. And in this case, you can see the canopy walkway we have in Florida, in case you get down to Sarasota. This is out in the state park, about 10 minutes out of town, and all the 3rd graders take a field trip there. So these kids were able to go to this canopy walkway, and these 3rd graders actually found a new species of weevil, if you can believe it. So lo and behold, they ended up discovering a new species and becoming official scientists, just like me. So maybe you guys can make observations in a tree somewhere and also become arbor-nuts. So here we have one of my other students in training. And here we have my own boys who have become good arbor-nuts, because when they were little, they had to come with their mom and they had to sample in the canopy and help her with her work. So that was kind of fun. I think I can see Anisha's pad as she's writing on the screen for me, but it's a heart, so that's okay with me. Anyway, sorry about that. And then we have other kids that maybe have some kinds of disabilities and they can't normally climb a tree, but we've taken pulleys and figured out ways that kids in wheelchairs can climb trees. So for 5 summers, I worked with kids that maybe didn't think they could become arbor-nuts, and all of these students discovered new species of water bears, which was really, really fun. So secret number 4, maybe the most important, is that trees really do keep us alive. And I think that's something that probably Miss Bloomquist has talked to you about, how important it is that we keep our trees. And here's a little list for you, but you know, tree foliage, the leaves filter water and make it pure for us to drink. The trees, of course, produce oxygen. They produce lots of medicine. Trees give us timber and honey, and the roots of the trees hold the soil in place, which is really important, so it doesn't flood all the streams with silt. And we now know that trees store carbon when humans pollute. Carbon dioxide, the trees store it. And trees also give us lots of food. Like one of my favorites is chocolate, which comes from a tree down in the Amazon. So I think that's very, very important. And lots of different building materials, even rope material comes from trees. And finally, you know, trees are a very important religious place for about 2 billion people on the planet who all use forests for their place of worship. So that's kind of neat. And here's a little example of that. This is Ethiopia. Actually, I should stop right there and show you this picture first, but that photograph is from a satellite in Ethiopia, a country where I work. And if you squint really hard, maybe you can see the little green circles, which are the little tiny remaining bits of forest. And these are called church forests. But as you can tell, less than 5% of northern Ethiopia has any trees left, because most of it is all of this very brown and dry farmland, because the people keep plowing in order to have enough food to eat. So all the trees have been cut down except for these little tiny circles, which are called church forests, because they grow around the church. And the priest takes care of all of God's creatures according to the religious philosophy, the same way that I, as a scientist, want to take care of all of the species of the world. So one bad thing is happening, though, as you can see here, and that is the farmers, without knowing it, are plowing more every year. They don't have computers or aerial maps or fences to be able to tell them where to stop plowing. So unfortunately, a lot of the trees in the church forests are disappearing. And the other bad thing is that the cattle and sheep get in the edges and eat all the seedlings and the saplings. So these forests might only have about 10 years left before there's nowhere for any animals or plants or bugs in Ethiopia to live. So I've been working with the children and the priests in Ethiopia to try to help them save their forests. And the one thing we've done is build these stone walls, which you can see behind the kids here, to keep the cattle out of the forests and help the priests protect all of God's creatures. And so this means we have to raise money. We have to pay for these walls. We have to pay for the gates to go in and out of the church. And so lo and behold, that leads us to secret number 5 that Vic and I want to tell you about. And that is that saving forests isn't really a job just for scientists, but it takes a lot of collaboration and partnership with business, with finance, as well as with scientists. So I'm going to turn it over to Vic now, who has worked in finance with his life, and he's going to tell you a little bit about how that works and how maybe everybody can help contribute to saving forests. So over to you, Mr. Vic.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Okay, great. I'm afraid what I have to say is not nearly as much fun or as exciting as what Dr. Meg had to tell you. But she showed you those terrible pictures of Ethiopia and how very, very little of the forests are left in Ethiopia. And unfortunately, the forests are almost always in places where there are lots of poor people. And the poor people are being offered money to cut down the trees, and they are expanding in the number of people that they have. So the more people that we have on Earth, the more they're going to cut down the trees unless we can find a way to make it more financially easy for them to live without cutting down the trees. You know, people come in there and they say, well, we can give you $1,000 if we cut down one of these big trees and we can sell the wood. But at the end of the day, that $1,000 will cause hundreds of thousands of dollars of damage. And so the scientists basically came out about 30 years ago, and they said, well, who cares if we cut down the trees? We can recreate everything that the trees do for us by building something covered and recreate what the trees do for us. So about 30 years ago, they built this Biosphere 2. You could see Meg's children down at the bottom there. And this planet recreation cost $200 million. And in this pyramid, they brought 8 people and they let them be there for 2 years. And inside that pyramid, they brought in animals, they brought in rainforests, they brought in a little ocean, they brought in coral reefs. They tried to recreate as closely as possible everything that we have naturally on Earth. And as I say, it cost $200 million for 8 people for 2 years. Now, at the end of 2 years, almost all the animals were alive were the cockroaches. The people who had tried to feed themselves and sustain themselves in there were emaciated. They had very, very little to eat. And worst of all, the oxygen or the air inside that pyramid was so bad, it was as if they were living on a mountaintop about 14,000 feet above sea level. So $200 million, 8 people for 2 years. And you have to know that on Earth at this moment, every 3 seconds, 8 people are being born. So try to recreate what the rainforest gives you with money like this, and it's impossible. So the main lesson that everybody learned was save the rainforests, because you're not going to be able to recreate it with artificial means. A very simple, successful story, and I'll tell you that one if Meg switches over to the next picture. You know, the water from New York City. Meg, have you got the next picture?
Yes, all set.
It's not showing up here with me. There we go. So the New York City has the most wonderful water of any big city in
Showing Ms. Bloomquist.
America.
It is showing. Yes, we have some friends who are sending some love to you. I don't know if you can see, that's a great big heart. It's just out of love. But if my friends can also erase and keep their annotate tools off for now, that would be definitely helpful for Mr. Vic and for Meg. If that is your pretty heart that you're sending love, could you please erase that? And thanks for the love, girls. I'll turn it back over to Vic.
Yeah, so in New York City, they get their water from a place called the Catskill Mountains. And the Catskill Mountains are about 30 miles north of the city, and they have wonderful water that comes into the city directly without any kind of treatment. Unfortunately, well, the story has a happy ending, but about 10 years ago, people decided that they were going to sell that area to developers who were going to build shopping malls and a big open air facility and so on. But then they needed to replace the natural water with a water treatment plant. And they decided, or they discovered, that the water treatment plant was going to cost them $6 billion. Now, $1 billion for you children is a lot of money. Let me just tell you that. Somebody said, hold on a second, why don't we just buy the whole of the Catskill Mountains? We'll stop the developers from having to build this thing. And that's only going to cost us $1.5 billion. So that was a very clever thing that they did. For a quarter of the price, they bought the Catskill Mountains, and they enabled the water still to be delivered into the city of New York as fresh and as clean and as wonderful as it can be, coming from these mountains and from these trees, which are just outside of New York. So the lesson to be learned really is that all of the rainforests provide us with air conditioning, with water, with climate control, and we have to be aware that at this point in time that almost 20% of the rainforests in Brazil, which is the biggest around the Amazon, the biggest rainforest area in the world, are gone. And they're being destroyed at a rate of about 50,000 square miles. That's, I know, hard for you to understand, but it's an area about the size of Florida. Every year, they're burning down these rainforests. So we really have to work together with conservationists, with people such as yourselves, young children, to make sure that those rainforests are kept for us and for yourselves when you grow up. So that's what I'm saying. But thanks to Meg and people like her, we're working on it, and I think she's making some good progress.
Okay, Ms. Bloomquist. So Vic and I have given a few pictures and stories, and maybe we should turn it over to the students.
Yes, absolutely. Well, we want to thank you so much for all that you were able to share with us. And the girls got to learn so many facts from the story about the leaf detective yesterday, but all of your real life images made that definitely something that we can all understand and see what that is like in real life and see how important that is. The girls learned yesterday in that book, one of the facts that they heard was that the rainforests are important for us, even if we don't have a rainforest that we live near. And we heard that what happens in the Amazon can affect even the weather in Texas. Is that correct?
That is absolutely true. Those forests are so vast and big that they create enormous clouds that are important for the entire planet, not just a local area. And as some of you might know, if you live in a city and they've cut all the trees down, it actually gets hotter and drier. But if we keep the trees, they're like this incredible machine that keeps the rainfall circulating. So it makes it really important for weather worldwide, not just in the Amazon itself.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for all of those specific pictures and the information that you shared with us. And the girls definitely had some questions that they wanted to ask. Some of them are not here on our call, and I have those questions that I'll ask, but do we have Lila Grace? Lila Grace, do you want to start with your question?
Okay. What was your favorite animal that you have found in the rainforest?
Well, that's a great question, and I'll answer first, and then I'll get Vic to talk about his rainforest where he used to live. I love things that eat leaves, so I guess and the sloth in the Amazon, because both of them are big furry animals that live on leaves, which is incredible. And of course, I also love beetles, make a whole life out of eating leaves all the time. So Vic, what's your favorite?
Well, I grew up in
With
Africa.
the internet.
Let me just see.
I think
you can hear me, right?
we can hear you. We weren't able
Okay,
to.
I grew up in Africa, but I didn't really grow up in a part of Africa that had many rainforests. So I had lots of elephants, for example, where I grew up, and the baby elephants were so much fun because you've probably seen them, how they walk around and they flap their trunks around. And the reason they do that is because an elephant has 22,000 muscles in its trunk. And so baby elephants have no idea how to control that. So when they flop around, they're learning how to control it. A big grown-up elephant can pick up a pencil, but a baby elephant has no idea how to control its trunk, and it just looks so funny and cute. So I love them when I see them when they're learning how to use their trunks.
And
there actually are elephants in rainforests as well as dry forests. I'll just qualify that.
There are, yes, but not where I grew up.
And I think we heard you correctly. You said a sloth and beetles. Is that what you said, Dr. Lowman? A sloth and beetles?
And I said a koala and a sloth, and as well as beetles. Yes.
Koala too. Thank you. There was just a little glitch with the sound, so now we know.
Oh, sorry.
Yep, no, that's okay. Lila Grace, does that answer your question? Did you want to ask about the tree house too?
Mm-hmm. Did you have to like live in a tree house for a while?
That's such a cool question. Of course, I would love to live in a tree house, and I have lived in tree houses. Well, a lot of times we spent the night in that inflatable, which I mentioned. Most times we climb out of the tree at night and go to the forest floor. One is, of course, and 3, sometimes we have to take our samples and put them in storage or write up our notes, and usually most of that equipment is on the ground. So mostly no tree houses, but if you want to build me a tree house, I would come and live in it for sure.
Great question. Thank you, Lila Grace, for asking that. We're going to go next to Aria. Aria, do you remember what you were wanting to ask about Dr. Lowman's plans? You can unmute, sweetheart. I think Aria might be having a little bit of connection problem. Aria, can you hear me? I'll go ahead and ask it for you, Aria. So, Dr.
Yes.
Oh, you want to ask your question, sweetie? Oh, I think she's having some audio problems. So we'll go ahead and I'll ask it for her. And then Aria, hopefully you can just listen. But in your book, we saw that you had to create plans and things didn't always work out as you planned. So Aria wanted to know, how did that work when it didn't go your way the first time? That's something that we learn about often when we're learning about famous women from herstory, as we like to call it in this club. And we want to know, what did you do when things didn't work out as you planned?
And that's a great life lesson, I think, for the girls. And it is true that sometimes things don't work out. Sometimes it rained. Other times we couldn't get the rope up in the tree. Occasionally we had the unfortunate episode of loggers cutting down our trees, which was really horrible. So then you just simply have to pick everything up and move on and try to get a better solution and not give up hope and keep on working. But it is challenging. And I will say too, being a girl in science had a lot of challenges along the way. So I'd say just stick together, girls, and try to always look for positive solutions because they're usually out there somewhere.
Okay, so the next one, Violet is not here. She had to go. She had another camp to attend this afternoon, but she was on here this morning. So in our story, we heard that you've been all over the world to different rainforests all over the world. And Violet was curious on what is your favorite place to go? What's your favorite place to travel to? And most specifically, do you have a favorite rainforest that you liked?
So I guess if I could wave a magic wand and take all of you there right now, I would take you to the Amazon in Peru, not in Brazil, the big one that Vic mentioned, but Peru is farther up from the mouth of the Amazon River, so fewer logging barges have gone up there. It's much more diverse and more natural, which is very beautiful and exciting. And I guess the other thing, I'm still waiting to go get invited by Vic to go on a safari and see the dry forests of Africa, because I haven't ever seen those. But I do love the Amazon, probably best of all. And I'm sure Vic will probably say he loves the dry forest best of all, right?
I sure do. It's wonderful. I mean, seeing every animal that you could possibly look for. I mean, including the aardvark. Does anybody know what an aardvark is? I mean, it's a fabulous animal, and it's the first animal that appears in the dictionary because it's spelled Aardvark, and it's basically an aardvark means an earth pig, and what they are really is they basically are ant eaters or termite eaters, and they have a long snout like this, and they only really come out at night, and they go around and they get into these massive termite hills, which in Africa sometimes can be 400 or 500 years old. And they can be 50 feet tall as well. So wonderful things that you could see in Africa. And I love going back there. So that's my favorite place to go to.
Okay, thank you. And then the next one, also Maddie Jo is not here. She was on here earlier. Maddie Jo was curious. We saw a video about you yesterday when you were shaking some branches with a big white, we weren't quite sure if it was canvas or a tent. Maddie Jo wanted to know, how did you see those tiny insects in the tree? And is that white, you can explain that to us, what that was and what you are wondering and learning about with all of the insects.
Sure. And you know, insects are so secretive. It is hard to see them. And so what we do as scientists sometimes is shake the foliage, and that white sheet is called a beating tray, and it's 1 square meter or almost a yard by a yard, so that we have a very standard size, and we shake the foliage for 10 seconds, and everything that falls in it, we count how many ants, how many beetles, how many walking sticks, how many spiders, and then we can compare that between rainforests, or we can compare it between the top and the bottom of the tree. So that's one of the important methods that we use to see how many insects are living in different kinds of forests. Sometimes you can use a net. Maybe you see people using nets to sweep insects. And other times you can go out at night and put a light in the forest and attract things to the light. In fact, if you leave a light on at night by mistake in your driveway, sometimes you'll go out in the morning and find all kinds of things have been attracted to the light. So those are just different methods that scientists use to collect or count insects. We don't always keep the insects, we just count them and then we let them go again. So it's really important to give us the data, the information that we need to understand what lives there.
Great, thank you. I know that will really help Maddie Jo understand that a little bit more. Thank you. And girls,
you can make it. You can make one with just a square sheet.
That would be fun for everybody to try that. I want to ask if there's any girls that are on here that after listening to the presentation, if you have any other questions that I didn't have listed, and maybe for Adeline, Soleil, there's some of you I see on here that you weren't listening for our story yesterday in our camp, but maybe do you have any questions? I want to open it up to anybody else. If you have one, Adeline, is your hand raised? Yep, go ahead, honey. You can take yourself off from mute. And Sienna's there with you.
Mm-hmm. What is your favorite color?
My favorite color is green because of leaves, of course. Vic, what's your favorite color?
My favorite color is green.
Green too? Cool. I think Vic's might be blue.
Guess what's mine?
We can all guess the blue with your favorite color with your shirt, right?
Yeah.
Thank you, Adeline. That's such a nice question. Sophia, I see the hand emoji raised. Does that mean you have a question too? No? Okay, that's
Oh
okay.
no, I just forgot to put it down
That's okay. Do you have
from the question when if I ever climbed a tree.
from what if you ever climbed a tree? Got it. Anybody else? I don't see any other hands. Let me just check the chat box. Okay, I don't see any more, but I know one thing that we talked about yesterday is the big question. Let me just switch it to here. The biggest question of all, especially when we're talking to young children, because I know these are complicated topics. And when we're talking about finances and money and all of those things seem very complicated when you're a kindergartner or even when you're a fifth grader or sixth grader. And I know we all want to know, especially because we don't live in a rainforest, but what can we do? What can young girls, like the girls who are in Big Dreams Bloom, do to help protect and save and make sure that those rainforests are there for the rest of our lives too?
Great question and good way to end. I think I can mention 3 important things, some of which you're already doing. Number one, you need to learn about it, which you are, and you can keep track of some of our projects on my website, www.treefoundation.org or www.CanopyMeg.com, because I try to put information up about different things that people can do, and we have some nice lists of ways that you can help. Number 2, you need to share it with everybody. You need to, maybe you have a book, The Leaf Detective, or maybe you get a few other books and you share those with your friends or your Sunday school, and remind people that it is important to save trees, and especially save big trees. Don't let people cut them down in Orlando if it's not really critical. Let's try to save all those places with big trees. And number 3, you have to study what you shop for. This is a hard one, but it's becoming more clear. Your parents could maybe buy coffee that's grown in the shade instead of a cleared area. If you go to your grocery store, you should check on the labels and find out, was this beef from Brazil, or did this soy come from the Amazon, or did it come from Iowa, which would be much better to buy. So it's really important that we buy things that don't cause the forest to get cut down. And it's really important that your grocery stores provide you with that information, and maybe kids writing letters to Publix or Whole Foods or whatever it takes to tell them, you know what, we want labels that tell us where this food came from. It would be a really great way to save the forest. And there's a lot of products that we need to focus on. Coffee's one, beef is one. If you can believe it, this thing called palm oil, maybe you can look that up, comes from Asia. And it's in shampoo sometimes, it's in plastic sometimes, and we don't want to buy that kind of shampoo or that kind of soap. We want to make sure that we buy things that don't cause the rainforest to get cut down. So it's a pretty big project, but once you find those things out, then you can share them with all your friends. And we're trying to put more of that information on my websites and help everybody think harder about the fact that Americans really cause the rainforest to get cut down when we buy the wrong things, and encourage those people that are cutting the forest to grow those products. So be a careful shopper. Vic, anything else you want to add?
No, sums it up completely. I agree.
Same thing. And girls, I have one more thing to add. It kind of tackles or tacks on with what CanopyMeg was saying, but it's just learning as much as you can every single day, reading books, finding out new information, and the information that you learn, share it with others, share it with your family. Sometimes parents don't even know these things. And when you learn it, you know better, and then you can tell other people that they should learn those things too. So what you learn, you can always share with other people. And Dr. Lowman, we also, one last final thing, if we can wrap it up with this, we read yesterday that when you started studying science in college, that you had a great big no from professors. Is that true to say that you couldn't even go into certain classes because you were a girl?
Well, I showed you, maybe I'm a little bit older than you are, Miss Bloomquist, but you know, when I went to college, I was the second class of women in my whole entire university. And so girls weren't supposed to do geology or chemistry or all those things. So yes, I was pretty shy and I got very discouraged by some of the male professors that didn't really want me in their classes. I hope that's changed, but if it hasn't, I think you girls can all stick together and help each other solve that problem.
We definitely noticed that that is something different because we chatted about who all likes learning about science, who likes doing STEM activities, who likes learning about nature. And every single one of the girls raised their hand saying that was something that they enjoyed. And luckily, we're living in a time when that's encouraged. And I told them all, I'll be their biggest cheerleader to make sure that they can follow their passions and their dreams too, which is what we're doing in Big Dreams Bloom. But I wanted to thank you, and girls, if you could give a great big, we'll do a double hand wave to thank Dr. Lowman and Mr. Vic for coming today and joining us. If you want to take your videos off even to give a big fun wave or a big round of applause. We're so grateful for your time. And I see Adeline. Adeline, we have time for one more. And Dr. Lowman, do you have time for one more? It looks like Adeline.
Eat when you're in the forest?
Really good question. What did you eat when you were there?
Oh, right. Well, we would eat what the local people cooked for us usually. Fruits, fish, fantastic fish. Sometimes we take a few things with us. I always took my Oreo cookies, I must admit. And we had to, of course, boil the water, but it's amazing. Rainforests have a lot of rain, so there's usually a lot of fresh fruits and great fish to eat there compared to maybe a desert where it's harder to find food.
Okay, well, great questions, girls. Dr. Lowman, Mr. Vic, thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to share your websites with the girls and their families, thetreefoundation.org and CanopyMeg.com, to make sure that they're staying up to date on all that they can do to help protect our trees. We heard that you are also known as the real life Lorax, and we wanted to thank you for speaking for the trees and protecting and doing all that you can and sharing what you've learned with us today. So thank you so much.
Before we hang up, Meg and I would like to say thank you, Ms. Blomquist, for all the work that you're doing with the children in these difficult times. We know it's been a very trying time in the last 18 months, and we wanted to say how much we admire the stuff that you've been doing. So if there's anything we can do to make your life a little easier, we're happy to do it.
Oh, thank you. Well, let's stay connected, and we'll continue to do things like this. We sure appreciate the time that you took spending with us today. I know you both probably have very busy schedules and being out of town, and we thank you for everything that you were able to teach us today. Everybody learned so many different new things, and we're really grateful for your time and all the hard work you're doing. So thank you. And girls,
Okay.
if anybody wants to give a great big wave, we'll do that last one. And Dr. Meg, I'll send you pictures of their treehouse designs.
Oh, please do. Love to post it. Thank you again.
Thanks for coming today. Thank you so much.
Bye,
Bye,
everybody.
everybody.
Bye, girls.
Bye.
Thanks for coming, girls. Hi, Adeline.
Bye.
Good to see you. Thanks for being here today. Hi, Sienna. Did you have fun? I see you over there, Sienna. Good to see you.
Bye.
Bye. Bye, Audrey.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye, Arya.
Ms. Blomquist?
Yeah. Arya, I'm sorry.
I'm
I'm sorry. It's hard to hear, honey.